Hello, good morning, and welcome to Sunrise Daily. I am Chamberlain Oso, live from Abuja.
Well, good, you're getting used to that. And this is Lagos. You're welcome. I'm Ayo Makinde.
Well, we are going to go right on and take a look at some of the dailies here today. We've got Ikechukwu Amechi, who is the publisher of the Nation newspaper. He's not there in Lagos, but he's here in Abuja. Yeah, they used to see you in Lagos, so seeing you here, they just wonder, oh dear.
Hi, Ayo. How are you? I've not potted. I'm still with you in Lagos.
So what you see is not what you get. So don't worry about that. Because I was actually wondering, wait a minute, is that Lagos or Abuja? Did I get it right?
No, I've not potted.
Okay, so we'll start with Vanguard newspaper this morning. 2023 poll. Over 600 cases in court against INEC. That's ascribed to Yakubu. You may rise above temptations. No, you must rise above temptations. CJN warns at inauguration of election tribunals judges. Says he won't condone abuse of power. Well, we know that this is not the first time that we're getting this kind of warnings or caution from a CJN about the administration of justice or handling, particularly when it has to do with election matters by the judges. So, do you think this will make any difference?
Well, we'll wait and see, but my hunch is that it won't. Because like you said, this is not the first time. Even when he took his oath of office the other day, he did say the same thing. But the truth of the matter is that if there is any downside to what we practice here as democracy, it is this shift to the cause determining who wins election rather than the people. What happens at the polling booth is no longer the sole determinant of who wins election. In fact, some people deliberately wait to go to court and get their victory now from the cause.
Is that what is encouraging these cases that INEC says over 600 of them in court against INEC itself?
Yes, because, you know, and the sad thing is that these 600 cases against INEC are pre-election matters, petitions already in court. So right from the primaries, the courts are determining who is the candidate of the political party rather than the party delegates. And it spills over to the election itself, and people go to court. And those who came forth in elections are pronounced as winners, and they are sitting pretty in offices today in some states of the Federation. And we move on. It is an aberration. It doesn't make sense that the courts are now determining a panel of 5 judges. None of them had the right to cast a ballot. Even on the election day, we now sit down and determine who wins election over and above the decision taken by the House 500,000 voters in a particular state.
These cases that are in court, I mean, to what extent can we blame the courts? Because how much of that has to do with the political parties themselves in terms of their internal democracy, and then INEC itself in terms of some of those double standard on the part of some of the commission, and that's why people also wonder. But because with the courts, if the cases are brought before them, they have to look at them.
Exactly. Everybody shares in the blame. The political parties. Because of lack of internal democracy in the political parties, we have this mess. And then INEC also has not played a very sterling role in the management of the electoral process. And the cause, Chamberlain, you can imagine that judges lobby to be appointed members of election tribunals.
Really?
Yes. Yes. So why do they do that? Because there are cases that are so glaring. There are processes that are there. For instance, the Electoral Act is there. Who wins election is spelled out, how that process that comes about. If we go back to the primaries that I talked about, some people bought forms to run for the presidency. They lost the election. After primaries for senatorial seats and others have been held, and they came back and said that they won primaries for senatorial seats.
Well, they didn't say what they actually won, because they went as far as the courts, the parties declared them winners, so they didn't declare themselves winners.
That is what I'm saying, that the courts are declaring them. And I said, how? Contrary to the Electoral Act. So everybody shares in the blame. If the political parties have internal democracy, and we won't be having all these problems. We won't be having the problems of people going to court to get their victory from the courts rather than from the people.
All right, you also have this above this lead story. ASU half salary payments. Gbajabiamila sues for peace, assures Buhari will intervene soon. So that one features
this ASU crisis is a shame. And you know, it beggars belief that after what we went through in the last 8 months, that we will still come back to this thing. I don't know what the Labour Minister means by saying that they should be paid the pro rata, at least for the month of October. This government, I'm sorry to say, is impervious to reasoning, to good sense. And they should consider the fate of Nigerian students and their parents who have been made to suffer.
Well, the Speaker is he's weighing in on this, and also assuring them that the President will equally intervene. So everybody will just hope that that is all sorted. NPC begs Biafra agitators not to disrupt 2023 census in Southeast. That will be the last one we'll look at. But if in the event that assuming that happens, does that invalidate the census?
It won't. If you remember, the last census, that was 2016.
There's always controversy about the outcome, the final results. Yes, of the census.
Yes, but Ralph Wazirike did the same thing with Masob and convinced Southeasterners that they were Biafrans and therefore should not take part in the census that is meant for Nigerians. We are still suffering the impact today. I think good sense should prevail. And if there's going to be a census, my own personal opinion is that the timing of the census is pretty bad. 2023, an election year, and all that. But if there is actually going to be a census in 2023, nobody should disrupt that in the Southeast.
All right, that is Vanguard newspaper this morning. Ayo.
The leadership newspaper is my first pick. Of course, that major headline on the front page of the Vanguard newspaper is also there right above the major story. 600 cases affecting 2023 preparations, and it cries out. But the lead story, as you can see, the die is cast in PDP. G5 governors launch campaign against Atiku. Interesting. I'm sure you have a thing or two to say about that. But look at the riders. Wike, Otom, Ikwazu, Ugwanyi, Makinde talk tough say party not ready to rule Nigeria. Presidential candidates trade words over absence at debates and town hall meetings. Well, pretty much saying that there are two stories to comment on right there, Mr. Michi. But begin with the lead story. What is your take on this? It would seem like unification isn't happening. Or is it happening behind the scenes and Nigerians don't know or can't see it?
There is nothing happening behind the scenes in PDP. The truth of the matter is that PDP is irredeemably divided as they go into the 23 elections. I was discussing.
Can you hear me, Mr. Michi? Okay, well, I'm pretty sure that we're going to get back to that shortly. But right under the nameplate on the front page of the paper, hope rises for traders as Abuja-Kaduna train service resumes this month. How much of a relief that is, it would be good to know. If it is just for traders as Abuja-Kaduna train service resumes this month, there are questions as to whether or not the people are fully, completely satisfied and pacified with what is going on right there along that route. But then, and then have the needful been done in terms of security for the route, for the train, and all those things? Well, I guess we're going to have to check. It is a very, very difficult one for governments, given that, hey, at the end of the day, it would seem like security is one issue, and investments that have been made into this service, another one altogether. But look right beside the major story, number of stories there, I'll just speak on this one. No room for recklessness. CGN warns election tribunals. Find the story on page 6 of the paper this morning. And right above the nameplate, organ harvesting, UK court moves Ekwuremado's trial to January 31. Getting really interesting, wouldn't you say? That's the leadership newspaper this morning. And the next one I'd like to look at very quickly, still talking about 2023, only this time different, is This Nigeria newspaper. And what do you have on its front page? We chatted about this yesterday, but that's what you have right there. NEMA raises fresh alarm. Another devastating flood looms in 2023. To be forewarned is to be forearmed, they say. And the lead story is, you'll find the story on pages 4 and 8 of this Nigerian newspaper this morning. As Niger Delta reps demand humanitarian minister's sack. Bayelsa flood affects 1.3 million persons, kill 96, says Diri. The details of that you will find on pages 4 and 8, as I said earlier, and that's that one. Right under that major story, you see a picture of what has now become known as the G5. But there is a story right under it. PDP crisis, why I will never support Atiku by Autumn, names street after Wike where IU has residence. This is getting interesting, isn't it? The story is on page 12 of the paper This Nigeria this morning. But right beside that story, that picture, you see two stories. CGN swears in 307 election petitions tribunal judges. The story is on page 4. El Rufai accuses NNPC of plunging states into financial distress. That is actually quite interesting. The story is on page 7. Raises question as to how much the states themselves generate in terms of IGR for themselves and a number of other things. But then look beside the nameplate. Not very cheering. Despite EFCC raids on BDC hubs, Naira falls to 885 Naira per dollar. That story is on page 15 of the paper this morning. Not very cheering, many will say, but hey, that's the reality that we find ourselves in. Nigerian News Direct has this one on its front page. FG to link 36 states with rail lines to reopen Kaduna-Abuja rail line. The story is on page 4. Promises constant surveillance and monitoring to prevent attacks. Well, we spoke about that earlier. It is a promise. That's what the federal government is saying, promising surveillance and monitoring to prevent attacks. What's the plan? Nigerians would want to know so they can feel safer. But then look at the third rider. As Ministry of Transportation seeks FEC approval for executing Itakpe-Warri railway line. Find that story on the front page. But the headline on the front page, the story, you'll find on page 4 of the paper this morning. Picture story is there, but right under the picture, the major big picture there, PMB scorecard. APC has a lot to campaign with. The story is ascribed to the Minister of Information. Find the story on the inside pages of the paper this morning. So many other stories on the front page of the paper. Chamberlain.
Yeah, sorry, I apologize for that breaking transmission. We lost you for a bit, but let's get back to this. But incidentally, the New Telegraph also has that story that you highlighted just before we lost you, which is the PDP crisis. Atiku Ayu boycott Goba campaign flag off, which but some of the papers he actually looked at before you take a look at New Telegraph, flooding this Nigeria highlighted Nema saying there's more challenges coming. There'll be a lot more dangerous one in 2023. The governor of Bayelsa State is saying that the flood affected 1.3 million people, several houses, and then some persons, the minister resign or be fired. So all of that speaks to perhaps their dissatisfaction with the way we're all handling this. But at the moment, is there any solution in the way we're reacting towards all of that?
None that I see, Chamberlain. I must be very honest with you. There's none that I see. Of course, if you remember, about 2 weeks ago or so, the president said he constituted a committee and gave the committee 3 months, 90 days, to come up with a report of how to handle this. In 3 months' time, you can imagine what that
How to handle the future flood. Maybe the one that's coming in 2023, who knows?
But the truth of the matter is that this is not the first time we're having this issue. Yes, this may be the worst, but we had another one that was as devastating as the one we have right now. So what was the government doing all those periods? Or did they not know that we may get to this stage, that the climate whatever problems that we have are not getting any better. Instead, they are getting worse. And therefore, all the issues that have to do with climate change, we continue to get worse. Other countries are planning. Other countries are doing. So what Nema is saying is giving that it is only going to get worse. But then, coming to what the Minister of
Humanitarian affairs?
Yes. I think what she said was rather tactless. You can't come and say that Bayelsa is not even amongst the first 10 most devastated this thing. What if?
Okay, sure. They were reasoning for stats, that they had their ways of measuring. So are you saying she shouldn't have said that, or what?
What are the measures? Chamberlain, what are the measures? We see on television every day what has happened in Bayelsa State. it beggars belief that a minister will come and start giving those kind of, okay, why did she say that? It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. And you know, it is simply the politicization of...
So it's not the way the press highlighted it that is the challenge?
No.
You say it's the way she said it?
Exactly, because that was what she said. Did she say that the press had reported him wrongly? They reported what she said. And I am saying that what she said was tactless.
Okay. Well, take a look at this one then. New Telegraph, PDP crisis. Atiku Ayu boycotts Goba campaign flag off in Benue as G5 governors inaugurate autonomous projects. Voting PDP in 2023 is life and death. And Rivers, thugs attack Atiku's supporters, pasting posters. So these are telltale signs of what to expect, isn't it?
Unfortunately, PDP is just divided down the middle. I don't see any prospects whatsoever of reconciliation. I was saying before we have the technical hitch that I was discussing with a chieftain of the PDP in Abuja yesterday. And my take is that if I were Alhaji Abubakar Atiku, I will move on. Whatever, I'll move on. But because Wike and the G5 governors are not prepared to back him, it's going to be a very, very big issue. If you remember, that was the same thing that happened in 2014.
But who do you think they will back then, if they don't back their party's presidential candidate?
I'm not too sure they have all made up their minds who to back or whether they are going to do that and block. I think the reason is that it is not Atiku. That they have seemed to have agreed. But if you watch the body language of somebody like Governor of Oyo State, Sheyi Makinde, I think he's tilting towards the APC presidential candidate. I may not be surprised if one or two of them tilt towards the Labour presidential candidate. But the bottom line is that they have made up their minds that it will never be Atiku.
Even though they also have huge interest in who becomes the state governors in their states, who are the senators, who are the members of the House of Reps, and who are the State House of Assembly members. So they've got interest in all those ones in the same PDP.
That's the irony. Makinde is running for a second term. Autumn is running for the Senate. Ibazo is also eyeing a senatorial seat. So,
and Rivers governor wants PDP to win the state.
And Rivers governor wants PDP to remain in power in the state. I think they are standing between the devil and the deep blue sea. How they are going to navigate it is a very tricky game that they are playing. How they are going to navigate it, we'll wait and see. In the next how many months, everything will be clearer. But don't forget that this same thing played out in 2015. PDP chieftains, particularly up north, said anybody but Jonathan. So for the presidency, they backed Buhari, but the governors and all that. But the flip side of that is that in most cases it does not work out. Because if you also remember what happened in 2003, when AD, in 2003, backed President Olusegun Obasanjo for a second term with the promise that when it comes to the gubernatorial election, then they will also come back. It was only Tinubu that survived it in Lagos because Tinubu did not go with that arrangement. Shegu Osoba and others lost out. So the presidential election will be conducted first.
Is it a good idea to have that first? Some think that, why can't we have everything together?
Well,
will it work?
Why won't it work? But then the issue ought to hold the governorship and state assembly elections first.
Alongside the presidential election, the senatorial election, House of Assembly elections, just have them all together.
If INEC decides that's what it wants to do. But of course, you know, the scheduling of the elections is also, you know, politics, a very big politics.
Oh dear.
Because everybody wants to, if the presidential election is conducted, then people queue.
Okay. Well, I think we also need to highlight this. WHO predicts pandemic deadlier than COVID-19, tasks Nigeria on preparedness. NEMA cautions on more devastating flood in 2023. A Senate mulls placing agency under presidency. Nigeria, second country with unimmunized citizens, unimmunized children, ascribed to Gavi and UNICEF. So you have quite a lot there making the rounds. All right, so there you go. That wraps it up with a look at some of the dailies here this morning. Mr. Ikechukwu Amechi is the publisher of the Nation newspapers. Thank you for coming on, and good to see you in Abuja.
Always my pleasure, Chamberlain.
All right, well, back in a moment. Join us again.
I will be faithful and bear true allegiance.
The Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Olukoyede Ariwola, administering the oath of office on 277 members of the 2023 Election Petition Tribunals at the National Judicial Institute in Abuja.
And I will do right to all manner of people.
These judicial officials will head the various election tribunals across the nation to dispense justice in cases that would arise from the conduct of the 2023 general elections, a task that the country's Chief Justice wants the officers to treat with all seriousness.
This is not an undertaking to be handled with levity. It is a solemn pledge between your lordships and your Creator.
The Chief Justice further warns the judicial officers against compromising and other actions that could bring the judiciary to disrepute.
I can confidently tell you that this is a weighty undertaking you have just signed before the Almighty God. I am saying this because, as the Chief Justice of Nigeria, I will not condone any act of recklessness, abuse of power, and public trust. This is a rare privilege, and your lordships must give a good account of yourselves.
A judicial electoral manual is then unveiled. It's a document that the Chief Justice of Nigeria and the President of the Court of Appeal hope will enable members of the Election Petition Tribunal to discharge their duties effectively and reduce conflicting judgments.
In order to forestall the incidences of conflicting judgments and rulings which tribunals and courts have experienced in time past, we have also developed a case management system. The case management system will facilitate research purposes and will guide against conflicting decisions of courts of ordinate jurisdiction.
It's less than 4 months to the commencement of the 2023 general elections, and the electoral umpire and members of the civil society organizations at this event underscore the critical role of the judiciary.
So far, we have been joined in about 600 cases relating to the conduct of recent primaries and nomination of candidates for the 2023 general election. The job of the politician is intensely partisan. Our job, INEC and the judiciary, requires absolute neutrality.
We're looking towards the 2023 general elections, and the eyes will be clearly focused on the judiciary as we see the elections conducted and the judiciary play its role in adjudicating free, fair, and credible judicial interventions.
According to the electoral umpire, a total of 30 elections were overturned by the tribunals in 2019, an improvement compared to the over 100 elections that were overturned by election petition tribunals in 2015.
Thank you so much for joining us this morning again. We have, as you've seen, Ebon Oluwadegboruwa, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, joining to discuss some of the issues that will be raised this morning, especially concerning electoral litigation. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, Mr. Adegboruwa. So here we are again.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, sir. As we said in the 90s, Nigeria is on the march again, it would seem. And here we are. The crucial issue that everyone has spoken about, from even as far as the president to the average Nigerian who is educated enough to know, is a crucial role of the judiciary in this. This step taken by the Chief Justice of Nigeria, for instance, there are those who are wondering concerning the timing of it. Too early, too late? But first of all, speak to the meat of the matter. What is your take on this step taken so far by the CJN?
Thank you very much. Good morning, Nigerians. I do commend His Lordship, the Honorable the Chief Justice of Nigeria, for the effort taken to ensure that there is early takeoff of this process of resolution of electoral disputes. You know, there are three tiers of government: the legislature, the executive, and also the judiciary. And so it's always important in every democratic setup that you should have a process by which people ventilate their grievances. And the reason is because in a society where there is rule of law, you do not expect that people should take laws into their hands. For instance, if you participated in a primary election and you got aggrieved, being dissatisfied with the outcome of that election, you are not expected to go and grab your opponent and beat him or kill him in order for him not to get to office. So you are expected to take the due process of law and follow through that process to ventilate your grievance. So for me, generally, it is commendable that we have these processes in place and that they are commenced early enough so that the judges themselves will have enough time to prepare. And the preparations should be about going through those manuals, going through those codes, going through those ethical requirements of that assignment to ensure that we learn from the mistakes of the past and ensure that as we move towards 2023, the judges are well prepared, the facilities are available, and we can have a system that can flow so that we can determine this dispute early enough, even before people to get into election. But that is generally, just like you have monitored this morning, the comments in the course of the review of newspapers, the Nigerians are worried about developments going on within our political system. And because judges are part of society, it then also means that there is a lot of concern about how these assignments are discharged generally in order to achieve a better society.
Well,
but having said that,
just 1 second.
I must comment.
My apologies, just 1 second. On that same issue that you mentioned, it would seem the concern is not just a passing one. The comment of the CGN also, while addressing the newly appointed election tribunal judges, was that as CGN, he is not going to tolerate any form of judicial recklessness. Is there a backstory to that, a history to that, in your opinion?
Well, yes, there is a need to restate this. And if you observe, every Chief Justice of Nigeria who has had the opportunity to inaugurate judicial panels or electoral tribunals have always restated these facts about the discharge of judicial assignment, abuse of ex parte orders, and the need for neutrality of judicial officers. So it will always be a sing-song for anybody who is involved in inaugurating such gathering, because that is the expectation of the general people of Nigeria. And I think that the reason for this alarm so early enough is to avoid the pitfalls of what you see in the past, where there are conflicting judgments, where we have cases of abuse of ex parte orders. But I must make the point, Ayo, that this warning is only for few. The generality of Nigerian judges are fair, they are impartial. And I use the word generality because of my own personal experience going in and out of court every day. The majority of our judges are fair-minded. So, but once a single person goes above board, it is that particular one that people will pick generally and use it as a brush to paint all other judicial officers. I can tell you, if we say maybe on a radio, 80% of judges, dispense judgment according to their own conscience. They may be wrong. And that's why there's opportunity for people to appeal and file their grievances. But generally, I can tell you without any fear of any doubt at all that majority of our judicial officers deserve commendation. And that commendation is because of the circumstances under which they operate. I mean, look at, for instance, my learned brother, Dr. Sebastian Horn, went to court recently, National Industrial Court, asking for a review of the salary of judges. This has never happened in the past 15 years. So if you, for instance, give me an appointment to be a judge, I will decline it. I won't even go and pray. I won't even think about it. Because the conditions under which judges operate are totally unacceptable. The salary, the welfare, the circumstances, judges are being intimidated. You wake up, you don't even know what will happen to you. I mean, judicial officers are subject to thorough screening by EFCC, by statutory agencies, law enforcement agencies. So we need to address those issues holistically. In the same way that we try to talk to the judges to work within the existing template. Otherwise, if we just keep sounding the warnings to them, don't be reckless, don't embrace corruption, they are members of society. So as we do this, we must also then fall back towards ensuring that we look at the conditions under which they operate. I don't want to mention states. I had cause to go out of Lagos recently to attend some courts. And I discovered that the generators that the court was using, it belongs to the judge. And probably he's the one fueling it. And that can't be acceptable. in any circumstance
Again,
where a
that
judicial
raises...
officer who is not well paid.
My apologies, Mr. Adegburua, for butting in. Again, that also raises an issue that I think it was the president of the Court of Appeal who also mentioned about funding the judiciary. Is funding a gap that could compromise the judiciary? Because one of the things that she said, I'm not sure it was something that she said yesterday, but that was previously mentioned some other time, was that, look, if this funding is not released on time for the judiciary to do the needful, there would be the problem of, being able to perform the job of the judiciary as expected. Is that something, a kind of reference to what the example you just cited now? Can you hear me, Mr. Adegburua? Okay. I'm pretty sure that we're going to get him back. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I hope you can hear. Yes, I can hear you.
Okay,
I will actually...
Okay, go ahead. You froze for a second.
I can hear you clearly.
Yes, we lost you.
I'm very sorry.
Okay, please go ahead.
Oh, okay. I was saying that funding is important to the performance of judicial assignment. And not just judicial assignment. Every person you give a responsibility, you should provide the wherewithal, the materials that will be needed to excel or perform satisfactorily. Otherwise, if you leave me to scramble for things that I require or I'll need to perform my job, it comes to some kind of hindrance. In the circumstances in which the chief judges of the states or the chief judge of the Federal High Court or the Chief Justice of Nigeria would have to beg, for accommodation. You remember in the last regime of Honorable Chief Justice Muhammad Tanko, there was a protest by judicial officers of the highest court in the land concerning their welfare, accommodation, vehicles. So I believe that just as we sound the warning to judges to avoid corruption, we should also ensure, first of all, that we have created a template for them to excel. And thereafter, if a single one of them should go above board, we have the opportunity to be able to use that probably as an example, to be able to give the warning to society and people generally that we should work within the template provided. But if we just keep sounding warnings to them without addressing the core issues, that may be a challenge. And that also leads me to the major issue. Because the chairman of INEC said they have been joined in not less than 600 cases, which is very alarming.
We'll come to that.
Also commendable.
My apologies. We'll come to that one because, there are those, even you find it alarming. Some will find it very comical. But it raises another question that I wanted to ask before we go into that about the role of politicians in the scheme of things. I recall a statement also credited to the president, the Chief Justice of Nigeria, where he says, and I quote, "There's virtually nothing that has not been seen or heard before, but you should be ready to see and hear more." He said, "Even though I rejoice with you on this very important appointment, I still sympathize with you for the many troubles, inconveniences, verbal attacks, and all sorts of uncomplimentary remarks are to be made about you by various litigants. These litigants, needless to say, would be, politicians in most cases." So in your opinion, is this some form of pressure on the judiciary?
I think that the challenge you have is that we have people who embrace systems that they cannot practice. Democracy is about freedom of choices. And so it goes back to the issue of leadership recruitment. For instance, primary election. You surrendered yourself to the people to make a choice whether they want to accept you as their representative. And in your presence, a decision was taken. Votes were counted. Politicians should find a way to accept losses. And you knew you lost the election. And then you begin to run around looking for technicalities. The man doesn't have the name, his name is different, he has I, he doesn't have T. And because of that, you are going to go to the Supreme Court. And you knew within your conscience you lost the election. I mean, let me give you the example, Ayo. Look at the Prime Minister of Britain, Mrs. Liz Truss. Less than 2 months, she said, I feel that I cannot discharge the responsibility that's expected of me. I'm leaving. I don't have anything at stake. I'm not there to look for money. I don't have anything at stake at all. And this is the core issue that we're facing in our land. We push people who go to office to enrich themselves. We push people who go to office to be able to use that as a means to better their lives. So it makes everything become more contentious. It's so difficult for people to accept that I have lost the election because their expectation is to use that platform to take care of themselves. And that then goes back to the issue of society, infrastructure. If there is enough security, if there is power, if there is enough vehicle train to go about, it would also have solved so many of the problems that push people to want to remain in power forever. So that's why I said it's difficult to just isolate the judiciary and then heap the blame on them, even though I know that, I mean, some of our judicial officers have some challenges. But I think that we should do it holistically to ensure that politicians learn to accept defeat and not make every electoral contest a matter for judicial interpretation.
But some
Otherwise,
of them,
once you find the case.
Yes, the politicians in most cases don't go to the courts on their own. They go through lawyers who are also in the judiciary. They know the laws. They of course, you know the drill more than I do. The politicians in most cases will always look for the loops in the laws to take advantage of, you know, the names and all those things that you have talked about. So is all of that on the politicians or even the judicial practitioners who know the law, who know the extent to which any case should go or should not go, as to go ahead anyway? The court is bound to listen to them, isn't it?
It's the politicians, Ayo. Let me just give you a scenario. This is Channels Television. You have your own principles. There are news items that will come to you. You filter them and you decide that it's not worth our reputation. So you throw it aside. The person who has supplied the news, seeing that Channels, because of your reputation, you are unwilling to publish falsehood, will probably then look for a blogger or somebody who doesn't have a reputation. There are many cases that come to me in my office here. I just look at the facts and say, it's not worth my name. And I give advice and say, don't bother yourself about this. But the politician who doesn't want to accept sound advice will then probably look for another person on the street who can then help him push the case. So it still goes back to the culture of accepting the will of the people, because that is the real essence of democracy. And you see what the legislature has done with the new Electoral Act. They've tried to sanitize it. They've tried their very best to make it more transparent. And that's the reason why you see I didn't join blaming judges mostly. Because if a case doesn't go to the court, there'll be no need for any judge to go and beg for you to file a case. So we have to go back to the politicians. We as lawyers, we can't go to court to file cases on behalf of people unless they come to us. And we give them sound advice based on existing principles of law, but they will not accept. I know many people who have come to me and I tell them, I don't think this thing will fly. But later on, I will read the case on the newspapers. They have gone to somebody else. So you can't blame the lawyers. It's for us to get our political actors to accept democratic norms of surrendering yourself to the will of the people. You may have money. You may be a big man. If the people do not accept you, then go and look for something else to do. And don't heat up the politics. And don't create panic. Don't create tension.
It is interesting, Mr. Adiburu, that you say that, you know, the lawyers are not to blame here. You are a lawyer, you say no to them. I mean, you've chosen to go by certain ethics of the profession. I wonder how others can't. But, you know, let's leave that. You mentioned the other time what the chairman of INEC also mentioned, which is the fact that, you know, INEC has been joined in 600 cases. In one situation, they were joined in 70 cases within, is it 1 day or 2 days or thereabout? And one wonders exactly how that has come to be. What do you make of that in the first place?
It is commendable. Honestly, it's
commendable that there are so many cases for INEC to deal with?
Oh, yes. You see, the reason why I say it's commendable is this. He said that this volume is lesser than what happened last year. In other words, the thing that is engineering the cases is probably, for instance, the Electoral Act. We have a new one. And so a lot of the provisions are being interpreted because they are new. And so it will generate more contests, it will generate more acrimony, and then the only option is to go to court to give interpretation. That's why when I started, society exists on 3 tiers: the legislature, the judiciary, and the executive. The Electoral Act is a product of the legislature. If you check through those systems, so many ambiguities, so many issues that you look at it and say, why didn't they think of this? Why didn't they put this there? Why did they do this? So you won't more or less say that it is the fault of those who go to the court or the fault of the judiciary who interpret the cases. It is the law. It's created so many ambiguity. And in spite of that ambiguity, it's still a commendable improvement compared to what we used to have. So, you know, we're just starting. We will keep learning. It will keep getting better. We shouldn't get worried that we have cases. The worry should be that there is enough platform to treat those cases within 1 month, within 1 week, for people to know the outcome. And then to ensure that we don't create conflict.
Yeah, just a quick one, Mr. Adegboro, before Chamberlain comes in. There are those who also say that INEC is complicit in those cases that you talked about. For instance, there are those who are wondering that why would INEC, for instance, accept some political parties' names, the names from political parties of people who didn't participate in primaries, or, you know, especially some of those primaries that they themselves monitored? What's your take on that?
It is still a matter of appealing to our political actors and all stakeholders in the system of leadership recruitment. You are the owner of the political party. You are probably the chairman or the secretary. And you knew that you didn't invite INEC to monitor your primary. And yet you went to file a case in court to ask that INEC should declare you as the winner of the election. I mean, I can't tell you what I go through here as a lawyer, the kind of things that people bring to us to want to just go and test the waters. So it's because I'm speaking from experience, it's the politicians. Because INEC itself will probably wait to get a court order. And without an order, he will not probably take a decision because he has no right to disqualify any candidate. But you will see politicians who didn't participate in election. You will see politicians who didn't invite INEC to monitor the primary election going to court to ask that they be declared as the winner of the election or as the candidate, or force INEC to recognize them. I'm not saying INEC is perfect. I'm not saying there are no challenges. But for me, generally, we have to get to a stage whereby the people who provoke these inconsistencies, the people who provoke these tensions, we should have a way to get them to accept, to simmer down, and allow the system to reproduce itself and improve itself to the extent that we can copy and joyfully say what we see in America, what we see in Britain is what is replicated in Nigeria. Unless we have that change of attitude, you can do a million Electoral Act. It will still come back to the same position that politicians do not accept defeat.
You know, that's a very key point that you've highlighted, Mr. Adegboro. But for those who listened and heard the part where you spoke about some lawyers reject certain matters, they go to others who accept it and go to courts, and then you hear all sorts of things. But we also know that the role and the importance of the judiciary in a democracy like ours is very, very huge and significant, because if we get it wrong at that stage, lots of people, we don't want people taking laws into their hands because everything collapses if that were to be the case. But how is it then that, because we know that there are rules, there are laws, processes that lawyers have to abide by, because it is some of those who are very professional who refuse those cases. Because when you say justice doesn't only need to be done, it ought to be seen to have been done. So how should this be approached, wherein you don't have politicians who keep boasting, we will meet you in court, we will go to court because we know we can have our way when we do get there? Because if that keeps coming across to the people like that, and then they keep denigrating the courts, that certainly it's not a good thing for our system. Are you there, Mr. Digboro? Can you hear me?
Yes, Kimberly, I can hear you. I was actually saying hello. I'm sorry, please. Maybe I got lost in the...
Oh, okay. Yeah, go ahead. Did you get the question, though?
No, I didn't get your question. I'm sorry, please.
Oh, I was talking about the point you made about some lawyers or politicians who prevail on some lawyers to perhaps go over to the courts and bend the laws or the books. Is that really tenable? Because you equally have rules and rules of proceedings, processes that lawyers have to, they subscribe to it. Some of the lawyers are professional, while some others are not. And we also know that it says, look, justice must not just be done, it must be seen to have been done. So is it tenable if lawyers say, well, politicians are to blame for this because they keep harping on lawyers doing certain things in the courts?
Well, generally, we have reference in the earlier discussion, every profession has rules of even lecturers. And now there's even people who manage motor parks. You see that they have their own system. So every profession will probably develop its own system of discipline, its own ethics. If a lawyer files a fit in court, knowing what the law says, knowing what... Hello, sir, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, dear. Yes,
I can hear you. Go ahead.
For the legal profession to deal with. It's for our legal profession to deal with errant cases of professional misconduct. And you have a lot of this going on currently within the legal profession. A lot of it going on. And we must commend that system.
Do you agree with those who say that the way judges are appointed happens to be at the root of some of these challenges that we're facing? And if we address that, we won't be talking about some of these matters wherein people think that judges are being influenced to give rulings in a certain direction.
I have no doubt that it is important to review that process, to make it more transparent, to make it more participatory for all stakeholders. For instance, before you appoint a lawyer as a judge, you probably want to find out from the Nigerian Bar Association, from his colleagues, about his reputation, about his professional conduct, and if he's probably somebody who works in the ministry, you also have the opportunity to profile such a person. So it's important to make the process a little more transparent and also participatory. But beyond that, generally, because judges are part of society, there is no amount of transparency that will still eliminate that possibility of partisanship. So it's for us to get to accept that when you have people in office who have been appointed to be arbiters, learn to accept whatever they have decided. And if you are not satisfied, there's opportunity for an appeal against that at another time. So it's not just to focus on the system of appointment, even though that is desirable, but to ensure that we cultivate that culture whereby we say democracy involves the freedom of choices, and when you are not satisfied with what has been done, then and you go to court, then follow the process of that judicial determination, and don't seek to influence it, don't seek to bribe the judge, don't seek to corrupt the person who is appointed to determine the dispute. I think that's what's important.
All right, we'll go to break, but we'll return and consider some other matters in just a moment. Do stay with us. Saying, well, they kind of disagree. They think that, in the first place, that this whole scenario, politics itself is about conflict resolution. They will always have issues, and that's why they approach the courts. But that the judges who allowed themselves to be used are the ones who should be taking the flak. So one wonders, does this kind of conversations, happen at the higher level within the profession, and were there suggestions in terms of how these kind of things can be addressed? Because we see time and again that CJNs keep talking about that caution to judges not to lend themselves to such activities.
Honestly, it would be hypocritical for me to tell you that I'm not aware that there are exceptional cases of lawyers and judges who really give us a bad name. And I have seen a lot. And it's quite worrisome about the issues we raise about transactional justice, where, it's possible, for instance, that you and I approach a court to settle a dispute for us, and then there's somebody else who takes over the matter and is going by hand to lobby, to corrupt people, to offer all manner of inducements. It does exist. I have no doubt about that there are exceptional cases. But like the point I made earlier, it will probably be 2 out of 10. And opportunities exist within our system to deal with them. For the lawyer, for instance, to be taken to the legal practitioners disciplinary committee for those within the outer bar, and then the legal practitioner privileges committee for those within the inner bar. And maybe these things don't come to the public domain all the time. But I can tell you, virtually every day, lawyers are being sanctioned, in particular for various acts of professional misconduct. It's just that goes on in the outer society. You can't but have these cases of errant behaviors within our professional association. But enough mechanism exists to deal with those cases, either for the judges and even for the lawyers. And so that will not be enough for us to discard the entire system, or, for instance, say that the judiciary has failed. Because without the judiciary, you can imagine the level of acrimony, violence that probably will have been going on, not only from electoral issues, but from commercial disputes, husband and wife, contractor matters. So it's just for us to continue to sanitize the system and ensure that those who try to bend it or to abuse it are daily being dealt with.
Very quickly, let me ask you this before we go into one or two other issues. INEC, at that briefing of yesterday, also made an allusion to the 2019 elections concerning elections that were upturned. He said, and I quote, 30 elections were upturned by the tribunals in 2019 as against over 100 in previous elections. So even so, in 23 out of 30 constituencies, that is 76%, the elections were only set aside in some polling units and not the wholesale nullification of elections in entire constituencies. Now, you've mentioned the government part, which is the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. But then in the elections, there are major stakeholders, which include political parties and the voter themselves. In this scenario that INEC has brought up that you have also seen and heard, exactly how do we reduce or totally take out those numbers where the elections are not decided at the polling units, but either in the courts or some other means?
It's a worrisome development for us. And even before you raise this issue, we have always advocated for a system whereby people should be allowed to choose their leaders. I do not agree, for instance, that we should have a president who is appointed or declared by the Supreme Court, or we have governors who are declared by the Supreme Court. It could happen in exceptional cases, but it should not be so prevalent as to totally make the judicial forum the platform for determining the choice of people. I do not.
Certainly something network issues, but I'm pretty sure we're going to have him back because that development is certainly worrisome and is something that I know that the judiciary themselves are quite worried about. So please go ahead, Mr. Adiburua.
If, for instance, the judiciary gives a decision, as they have done over the years, that the choice of candidates of who represents a political party should be the internal affairs of that political party. The judges have consistently maintained that principle as a decision. But you discover that even when that decision is the will of the judges or their decision, the politicians do not accept it. And they will find a way to seek to bend it. They will find a way to seek to upturn that procedure and still impose themselves on their people. So it's my own counsel for us, both judges, politicians, we should allow people to choose their leaders. And so we'll have less of governors declared by the courts. We have less of legislators, less of councillors declared by the courts. Otherwise, once that is gaining ground, everybody will seek to then use that as a means to upturn the will of the people. Election then becomes irrelevant in the choice of democracy. And that is really unacceptable.
Is there any way the electoral... My apologies. Is there any way the Electoral Act can, as previously constituted the 2022 law, is there any way in which the law, helps to ameliorate that?
I think that it's important for the National Assembly by now to take a second look at the Electoral Act. Yes, it's commendable that it's an improvement upon the old one, but the ambiguities created in several sections of the Electoral Act is enough to give us cause for concern about what we'll probably witness in 2023 and beyond that period. But it probably is too late now to amend the current Electoral Act for the 2023 elections because it will cause a lot of disruption. But immediately after the 2023 elections, it will be important to review the and of course rework it. And it's doable. So it's a learning process.
Okay. Well, just a quick one on, still talking about people, rights and dignity of human life in Nigeria concerning, and this is one of the things that interests you, human rights and all of that. Just recently, we were told that the Abuja-Kaduna Railway service will resume, but I don't know if we can say much the same for the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, even though it is not totally shut down, but the experiences that people have on that road is something so concerning, even you have to write about it, joining your voices with that of several other people. Exactly, in your opinion, what is going on here? Mr. Adeburu, can you hear me? Okay, I am very certain that we're going to get him
I
back.
think that this Ibadan Expressway is a road infrastructure that is supposed totally unacceptable, because the road construction is supposed to be meant for use by the people to better our lives. A road that is supposed to be a means of
Please go ahead, Mr. Adeburu. Okay, I'm sure that we're going to get him back, but that's the
mobility
experience.
from one point to the other. Should not be entirely at the feet of the government and the country. Not just the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, but generally all our roads. There's a feeling of abandonment by the government. Look.
Okay, well, I'm pretty sure that we're going to get Mr. Adeburu back, but this is the experience that several people have on a daily basis.
Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, for instance.
Just a second. Mr. Adeburu, can you hear me?
No, very recently.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Well,
yes,
we seem to be getting on and off signals from you for a bit, but if you could, pretty much, take that question again and, let us have your opinion so we can make a lot more sense of what you're saying about the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. Please go ahead. Oh dear. Well, anyway, it's just network issues.
Surely I can hear you.
Okay, please go ahead now. We seem to be getting on and off signals from you. Go ahead, please.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. I said that the facility that is meant to convey people from one spot to the other shouldn't be a death trap. And the federal government should take the blame for what is going on that road every day. Because what we see now is that there's no funding for the road. We don't know what's going on. I mean, it's a road that's taken 2 administrations of over 10 years. And there's no solution, in sight. And I had an experience, and I probably could have lost my life, but for the grace of God, at night, going through that road for 3 hours, for 4 hours. And people go through that every day. People come to work, people are traveling. So it's important for the Honorable Minister of Works and Housing to sit down with the contractor and work out a template that will avoid what our people go through in terms of their health challenges, in terms of loss of man-hour, so that this construction can come with some kind of human face and be accelerated. You are talking about the busiest road in probably sub-Saharan Africa. The template of this reconstruction is totally unacceptable, because the right to life should not be terminated by government negligence. And I know people who have died by reason of their experience on that road. I know people who have suffered serious health challenges on that road. And so it's not acceptable, for instance, that there are no agencies to be able to guide people. The place is not illuminated at night. There are challenges about people who remain on that road for 4 hours, sandwiched between trucks, fumes, and there's nobody to guide you. There is no light. And then we keep getting the promise that the road will be completed in 2022, and we're almost in December, and there's no sign. So I believe that either the contractor is not being funded, or indeed the government is playing politics with the reconstruction.
To understand, what you mean. This is you've spoken about funding
of the Lagos-Ibadan for the administration.
Yeah, just one moment, if you can hear me, Mr. Adeburu. Twice in your response, you've spoken about funding for the reconstruction going on along the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. Is that something you have on good authority, funding challenge for the project?
No doubt. I have no doubt that the government is playing politics and is not funding that project. Because on a number of occasions,
okay. Well, I'm pretty sure that we're going to get, Mr. Adebowale back, to speak about this. But it's...
Both contractors, RCC, as a bait. Because election is coming. The federal government and the government of the All Progressive Congress is deliberately using this road as campaign strategy for our people, and it's unacceptable, totally unacceptable.
When you say using it for campaign, could you elucidate?
I don't have any doubt in my mind that discharging his responsibility. I can hear you, Mr. Ayo.
Yes, I said, when you say they're using it for campaign purposes, exactly what do you mean?
What I mean is this. The government is using projects to tie the hands of the electorate. We are going to complete second Niger Bridge. We're going to complete Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. We're going to do this. We're going to do Nigeria Air. In order to give the impression that there's need for continuity. And that is unfortunate and it's unfair. Otherwise, if you are committed to a project, why should it take 8 years for a reconstruction of a road that is less than 200 kilometers? 8 years. If not that they are using it as a bait for people to vote their own party into power, as a means of ensuring continuity. I see it as that. Otherwise, there's no reason why people go through what we normally go through on the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. Totally unacceptable.
Well, Mr. Adebowale, there a number of times we have taken up the Federal Ministry of Works on this matter, and one of the things that we hear them say is, look, it is understandable what people are going through. They sympathize and all of that. But they also, raise concerns about the way the people also use the roads. Some, would just, they don't use the roads discriminately. Sometimes, long and short saying, some of the issues they have is that of road use by the people themselves. For instance, a route that is supposed to take 3 cars, sandwiched to take 2 cars, but the people are not patient enough, and consequently they shunt and drive irresponsibly and block the roads, so that they create a backlog that wasn't part of the design. How do you respond to that?
No, but that is an unfortunate blackmail. I'm sorry to use that word, from anybody saying such a thing. I was on the road myself. In the middle of the night, 2 a.m., in the middle of the night, 2 a.m., and spent close to 4 hours there. Not a single presence of any security agency or any transport agency or transport monitoring agency to guide people. How do you go back and labeling people as road users are not patient to use the road when there is no guide, when there is no opportunity for them to enjoy illumination? How do you drive in the night? Who is responsible for construction has not placed any sign. There are no, what do I call them, lights that would enable you navigate from one point to the other, and there's nobody directing you. No ambulance services, no security agents on site to be able to assure you of your safety. I don't think that is fair from any government official to say that the blame is on the road users. And you get to the traffic point, Ayo, you then begin to wonder what's going on. Why do you narrow the road if you are not walking? Why will it take 1 month for you to do a single joint of a particular road, and then you're on that portion, and then immediately you open the road, next week you are coming to block it again? Why is there so much inconsistency in the construction plan? Because there's no assurance, for instance, that that road will be completed this year. No assurance. And even there's no assurance that it will be completed in 2023. And the government is liable because the Constitution guarantees the right to life. Anything you do to deprive people of their life that doesn't follow due process, you are liable.
There are a number of questions. My apologies. A number of other questions to raise along the issues that you have brought up in this conversation, but we'll take that on when we return from this break. Please stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. We still have Mr. Ebolu Adeborua with us, Senior Advocate of Nigeria. We're talking about the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway and the issues there. Well, Mr. Adeborua, some of the issues you've raised only further expatiates or highlight, shall I say, the issues that may or could arise as a result of the sufferings, so to speak, the experiences people are having on the highways. Is there any way, in your opinion, that people can seek redress? Is there any need for any form of redress? Talking about the issues that you've raised, people whose lives are put in jeopardy and all of that. Do you see such a thing happening, any litigation happening as a result of that?
Let me just give you a graphic picture. An elderly, reputable, well-known legal practitioner traveled out of Lagos. On his way back, he ran into this gridlock and remained there for hours. He couldn't get down from his car because trailers and trucks are parked on both opposite sides of the car with fume coming out. And he remained on that spot for over 3 hours and realized that his health was failing. And he managed to get down from the car to stretch his leg and move around, but it was too late. Developed health complications and eventually died. Such circumstances, if the family would take the gauntlet, should produce a suit in court against the government and the contractor. The Constitution says in Section 33 that every person is entitled to the right to life. And the only circumstances of that deprivation are stated clearly in law. So if you deploy a road construction that is meant to serve the people, to terminate their life, you are liable. Unless we take this opportunity to hold government accountable, this will not stop. And I can tell you, Ayo, Julius Berger, probably a company from Germany, will he do this in his own country and lock up the roads for months, the whole night? The place is dark, no sign, no ambulance services. Will Julius Berger be able to replicate this in Germany and get away with it? So I'm encouraging our people. And it's not because, we do not commend the government for the effort in terms of provision of infrastructure. But no infrastructure should be pursued if the end result will lead to termination of life. No road construction should be worth the life of any Nigerian. No project should be worth the suffering and agony that our people are going through. Because the government should sit down and plan. How long will it take us to execute this project? What is the funding available for it? It's unacceptable, for instance, Ayo, that 8 years.
Well, I'm pretty sure, yeah. If you can hear me, Mr. Adeborua.
No completion date. I can hear you.
Yeah. Oh, I just wanted to ask a question around whether or not you think these issues that you have raised, the human rights issues you have raised, are things that are within the POV, the point of view of the Ministry of Works, Federal Ministry of Works and Housing. I say that because the Minister of Works and Housing is also a senior advocate of Nigeria, such as yourself. Now, given the fact that, one, he is very well versed in law, two, I'm very, very sure he's very well aware of the agonies that people have on these roads. Do you think he is aware of the issues that people are having and consequently sitting atop it, or you think the Federal Ministry of Works is just blinking in the dark, unaware, and perhaps, as you are suggesting, uninterested in the welfare of the people?
I believe, from my own personal assessment, based on my own experience, no excuse can be proffered by any minister. No reasonable justification can be propounded by any government to rationalize the frustration, the agony that our people go through on the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway and indeed other roads across the Federation. I do not want to place it on the doorstep of any particular person, but the minister in charge of road construction is the Honorable Minister of Works and Housing. He should take responsibility. It's not a matter of just a soapbox. The reality on the ground is that our people are suffering. The reality on the ground indeed is that government is not showing responsibility in terms of the acceleration of the project, in terms of funding, in terms of timely warnings for people through enlightenment programs. You should know, for instance, that this is the alternative route you can take. You should know, for instance, that this is the number of days that it will take us to execute this project. Everybody is just silent. We just take people for granted. You just go there and narrow the road, and this is the busiest road in sub-Saharan Africa. And people stay in traffic, jeopardizing their health, their man hours for hours. The longest project anybody has constructed in the world, because it started even under the Goodluck Jonathan administration, who was using it as political strategy to get re-election. And that's exactly what the Buhari administration is also engaged in. And it's unfair on our people. We must say it, that every time we get these kind of fake promises of delivery of infrastructure that leads to the death of people, we should rise up and reject those people when the opportunity comes for election. We should. I believe Nigerians should use this particular frustration to pay the APC government back in its own coin. Why would you do a less than 200-kilometer road for 8 years? It's not saying that you can complete it in your tenure. It's unacceptable. And we should go to court and challenge the government. All of us who suffer agony on this road should have the courage to approach the law court and hold the government accountable.
Okay.
Totally unacceptable.
Well, you made a comment earlier, Mr. Adegborua, that as far as you're concerned, you don't see this road being completed this year, probably not even next year. But both the Controller of Works at the Federal Ministry of Works and Housing, as well as the Minister of Works and Housing, have said that this project will be completed before this year is over. So I ask you again directly, do you think their promises hold water, or you have your doubts?
I don't think you need a prophet to let anybody know that that is just wishful thinking. To say that the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway will be completed in December, I mean, it's just wishful thinking. I mean, the telltale signs are all there. Major sections of the road are even not tackled at all. And even the parts that they claim has been completed, you get there, you see it undulating, you see some portions being scraped today and replaced tomorrow. How can anybody accept this as a reconstruction project? And then we've used all our resources, Abacha loot, we've used all our resources, loan here and there. Our generation will be paying for loans upon this poor construction. I don't think that anybody should deceive the people of Nigeria that he wants to hand over any project in 2022. It's not possible. And I'm not saying that it's not a laudable thing to embark on infrastructure, but don't use it as a political capital, as a gimmick. Be very transparent and fair in your assessment. Be very committed. Fund the project. How many governments will account for a road construction for 8 years? I have not seen it before. If you don't want to do the road, it's a different thing. But don't continually give us the hope and assurance that you are on it. And we can see evidence that it's not moving. So my own contention to the people of Nigeria, of course, is to hold the government accountable, to ensure that this project is funded and completed. Because if it's going to be completed, we'll see the evidence. There's no such evidence. You get to the point where the road is narrowed, you even wonder, what is Julius Berger doing? You don't see anybody. You don't see any activity. And you see blocks that are mounted to limit free passage in the name of construction, and nothing is going on there.
Well, just
it's unacceptable.
Okay, just one quick one before we round this off. what would you expect the Federal Ministry of Works and Housing, in particular the Honorable Commissioner for Works and Housing, beg your pardon, Honorable Minister for Works and Housing, to do now, listening to this that you're saying?
I beg the Honorable Minister of Works and Housing to show responsibility. I beg Julius Berger to demonstrate globally acceptable standards for road construction. For instance, Ayo, number one, tell us funding. Everything should be transparent. Is the money of the people of Nigeria? How much have you committed to the road? What is needed to complete it? Do we have that fund available? Make it transparent. Lay it on the table. Secondly, provide enough security to give people assurance. How do you go into a road at 2 a.m. with your valuables, with your children, with your wife, at the mercy of terrorists, cultists? What happen in our nation? The Federal Minister of Works and Housing should look for ambulances and place them on the opposite side in case anybody has any emergency. You can come to their rescue. And then Julius Berger should be pragmatic in the road construction, in the execution.
Okay.
Why would you block various portions of the road at different times when you are not working? If you want to concentrate on a particular angle, do that place, execute the construction and finish it before you move to the other area.
All right.
You can go to that road now. They are not.
Oh dear.
Yes, Ayo.
Okay, no, I just wanted to say, I mean, I can only expect that right after this program you will get calls, or there will be responses, hopefully, and they will be able to bring the updates to people. For now, we have to thank you very, very much for all of your perspectives this morning. Ebonolu Adegborua is a senior advocate of Nigeria. Thank you once again for being a part of our program this morning.
Thank you, Ayo. I'm begging that we should not let Christmas or even the season meet us in this circumstance. Otherwise, the agony of the people will be unthinkable.
Wow.
Unthinkable. Thank you very much.
I'm pretty sure everyone has heard you. Thank you again for being a part of our program. Well, we started with electoral litigation, and let's have another conversation around that with recently appointed, or should I say anointed, senior advocate of Nigeria, Adebayo Ojo, who is a former Attorney General and Commissioner for Justice in Oyo State. He joins us via phone this morning. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Ojo. Well, this electoral litigation issue is, I mean, we've spoken quite a lot about it already this morning. But, you know, looking at some of the issues INEC raised, that over the years, even though the numbers are coming down, some of the cases are not decided at the polling units, are not declared by the INEC, according to law, but by the courts. How do we put a stop to that, in your opinion? Can you hear me, Mr. Ojo?
Yes, I'm with you.
Okay, please go ahead. Did you hear my question?
Good morning, Ayo.
Yes.
Good morning, and thank you for having me. Look, there is no dispute. I can hear you. Good morning. There is no dispute at all, except we are trying to make views about nothing. And I will explain this. Look, let each arm of government play its respective role. We have the executive, we have the judiciary, we have the legislature. The legislature has made or has enacted the Electoral Act, which has been assented to by the president, that's the executive. And the president has even gone far to test this Electoral Act by approaching the Supreme Court. And the judiciary has decided that after you've appended your signature to it, there is nothing again to be set aside. Look, the INEC chairs will not worry. Let them conduct free and fair election, their own rule. Then let the aggrieved politician approach the court for adjudication. That's also their own right under the law and the constitution. And again, let the judiciary decide if in the certain cases they feel the person who was declared by INEC was not properly elected, then they can set aside and declare the person that has won. So it is nothing new. There's nothing new in it. We can have a judiciary imposed or imposed elected representative. There's nothing new in it. And it has always been like that, even since the First Republic, the Second Republic, the Third Republic, and this Republic as well.
But then there will be those, Mr. Ojo, if you can hear me. Just 1 second.
On this issue of...
Can you hear me?
Hello?
Can you hear me now?
I want to disagree with Sadi Purua on this issue of that our politicians are going after the members of the judiciary. I'm a politician. I won't pretend about that one. I'm not like those people who will pretend that they are not politicians, when indeed they are also politicians in their own right. But the issue is this. What is politics itself? Politics is about conflict and resolution of conflict. There won't be problems. It is for the judiciary to decide and determine and place everybody where they belong. So there will also be dispute. But it's for the judiciary to resolve. Because they should resolve the dispute. And that's what we call adjudication or judicial determination, as the case may be. So that's just it. Well, but the issue is, instead of blaming the politician, I won't blame any politician. I will blame judges who allow themselves to be compromised or be influenced by politicians to pervert the course of justice. Because the authority they took is that I'm going to dispense justice without fear of favor, ill will, or affection to all manners of men. And the goddess of justice, which we call Tennis, is blindfolded. He hears all, but he sees nobody. He sees nobody. What we should do, what our courts will turn out, is what we call justice and not judgment. So what beside that judge who allow him or herself to be compromised or to be used by politicians to pervert the course of justice? That's my case.
Well, Mr. Ojo,
why the judiciary there? Why are they there? They are there to resolve disputes among politicians, among individuals, among government, or among different kind of people. But what you should do is that you must make sure your judge can stand the test of time, and that you dispense justice with fear of God and in accordance with compliance with your oath of office. That's
well, there are issues that you have raised there that are very, very interesting. You don't blame the politicians. You blame the judges. Okay, you blame the judges. Just a second. Just a second. Just a second. Just a second, Mr. Ojo. Just 1 second. Just listen, please. Just, Mr. Ojo, just 1 second, if you can hear me. If you can hear me, Mr. Ojo, just 1 second. Just one second, please. Let me put in the question. Mr. Ojo, please, if you can hear me.
In this country, has that power. It's only reserved for
I'm not sure that Mr. Ojo can hear me. Can you hear me? Now, please, just allow me to put in the question. How about the lawyers who know what the law says, who take undue advantage of whatever it is they call loopholes or interpretation of the law, to pervert or, to raise issues where there are none in personal interests and not in national interests?
Thank you so much, Ayo. On Saturday, I made an intervention in a CFR legal platform. And I said, look, our problem in this country is not about law or about concern about the fact. Let's have 100 laws, 100 electoral acts, 1 million electoral acts. We will see the way we are the same. And that's why I always quote Justice who said, the fault, they are voters. It's not in our star, but in ourselves. Because we are the underlying. We are the problems. And you see, let any lawyer file frivolous or legal application. But NBA is there. But our regulatory authority is very weak. NBA is not regulating the affairs of his members very well. Let them try what we are doing here. Let everybody try a tenth of it in Europe or in the US. You will lose your answers. And they know. But here, anything goes. They know you can get away with anything in this country. Just because the system is too weak and it's liable to be manipulated. Nobody can do that anywhere abroad. The way our people practice law in this country, my brother, I'm a big player in the industry. You will be surprised.
Okay. Well, Mr. Ojo, if you can hear me.
To say
Just 1 second.
Members are filing.
Just 1 second. Now, you raise issues about, what the judges do. You say you lay the blame at the foot of the judges. But then you very well know that no judge would concoct any judgment or justice, as you put it, which is not in accordance with the law. And you know very well that judges are fully aware that whatever decision they declare as justice or judgment or whatever you want to call it becomes law one way or the other. And they also are legal practitioners. So how is it the problem or the problem of the judges when it is everything argued for or against by lawyers such as yourself?
Listen, which you yourself know is illicit or he got to wait.
Can you hear me, Mr. Ojo?
I can hear you.
Okay. Did you hear my question?
Yeah, what's your question, sir?
Yeah. I said you blame, judges for being compromised.
Yes.
But then don't also forget, just a second, just listen, please. Let me allow the question to come in. Now, how is it possible for judges to make pronouncements that are not in accordance with the law when it is lawyers such as yourself that argue for or against, leaving the judgment of what is right or wrong or what the law says to the interpretation or decision of the judge?
Thank you, Ayo. We should not forget the fact that judges are also human beings. And like, I think it was a Saul who said that about the Supreme Court justices, when William asked them to set aside a ruling which they gave, and he said that was not in accordance with the law. Judges are bound to make mistakes. They said, we are not infallible, but we are infallible because we are the apex court. Because after Supreme Court, their judgment goes nowhere. They say you can appeal to God when you get there, even if it exists. But this is this. A judge is bound to make mistakes. A judge is human being, but let that mistake be the mistake of the head and not of the heart. Mistake of the head and not of the heart. And that's why we have the Court of Appeal to review whatever has been done by the judges of the High Court. And again, Court of Appeal can make mistakes, and you go to Supreme Court. And Supreme Court has already made mistakes before that you can even apply, or maybe on their own in future. They said our decision is also wrong in case A versus B was wrong. We now look at it and we set it aside. But let that mistake not be one that was a deliberate or intentional mistake. That's what we are saying. Not one that was procured by monetary inducement or by influence or by ill will of Allah faction. No, let it be mistake of the head. If you make mistake of the head, there's nothing wrong with it. The upper judges are there to correct as the case may be.
Okay.
So set aside. That's why they are there.
Well, Mr. Ojo, just one last one from you.
Has abused his oath of office.
Yes.
Just like the CJ said yesterday, he's not fit or worthy to be a judge.
Just one last one from one last question here now. Now, there are three major critical stakeholders when it comes to electoral litigation. That is the courts, the judicial officers or legal practitioners such as yourself, and the litigants, in most cases the political parties. Most of the time, we rarely have a situation where it is the voters or the communities that voted that go to courts. Now, which of these three fundamental bodies would you say is most culpable? The judges, litigants, that's the political parties, or lawyers such as yourself who sometimes file one case here and another case there, and the judges have to give conflicting judgments?
Thank you. Let me foresee this. All of them are equally important, even including the witnesses, which you've not mentioned, including security agency that will be subpoenaed or invited to come and give evidence before the court. And I'll give an instance. During the case of former Governor Mineko Anagabu in Odo State, we brought one forensic analyst, expert from the United Kingdom. That's Adrian 40 of blessed memory. There was a mistake in the affidavit which he deposed to. Instead of AS, as, we typed IS. IS instead of AS. And Chivani Peko and which are the common goals, they were the big council. During the trial briefing, they told the man, look, this one will be AS, IS. The man already said true. But please, in case they ask you, just tell them that you made a mistake. He said, I didn't do it. I'm a native. I won't lie out. I won't lie out. I won't do that. My brother, I'm a lawyer. I've seen pastors, I've seen imams. When they come to it, they will tell you, they will ask you, what do you want to tell the court? They will come to court to lie, gleefully, without fear of God. Whereas a native said, no. But the most important, which I would think is the carry out, are the judges. Because the box top on that table. Let everybody come and prove that transfer all lies, truth, half-truth, and distortion before you. It's the duty of a judge to sift the chaff from the wheat and come to a reasonable conclusion which all manners of men will now think, after this judgment, I believe I can walk away. I've obtained justice and not judgment. I've obtained justice and not judgment. There's a difference between justice and judgment. A judgment can be anything. Well, it can be compromised, it can be procured, it can be influenced, it can be maybe you are having a moral relationship, you may be having a moral relationship with the wife or with the daughter of the litigant. No, that's not justice, that's judgment. But when you have judgment, when you feel happy and you think you can walk away from the court happy,
okay,
or happier,
well, the issues,
yes, I'm satisfied.
Yes,
my matter has been determined.
There's so many issues have been raised, Mr. Adebayo Ojo, but sincerely, we're completely out of time. We have to thank you so much for being a part of our conversation this morning. Adebayo Ojo is 2022 Senior Advocate of Nigeria designate, as well as a former Attorney General and Minister of Justice, beg your pardon, Commissioner of Justice in Oyo State. Thank you again for your time this morning. Let's take some messages from you, your contribution to the program. Professor Enakena's tweet comes first, and this is what he says in his tweet. The National Assembly should make a law setting up an election tribunal which will become the final arbiter for all electoral disputes within a timeline before they are sworn in, to allow elected officials settle down to deliver the dividends of democracy.
Well, Ibuka says the negligence of Lagos-Ibadan Expressway is legendary. Lagos-Ibadan road construction has been on forever with no completion in sight, whereas Kaduna-Zaria-Kano 375-kilometer expressway awarded to JB that began in 2018 is nearly completed. I'm a constant user of that road, he says. But I think we know that they've spoken about it when the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway will be completed, actually, just in case you missed it.
Well, still on that, Henry Okeke's message comes in. The politics of road construction is a serious economic sabotage that must be redressed as a matter of fundamental rights. All over the nation, Nigerians are subjected to avoidable, unbearable hardship, deaths and injuries on federal and state roads. This will continue if people are not held responsible for failing to do their jobs. Free movement of people, goods and services is a fundamental human right, Henry says.
Oh, okay, well, I got another email then. This is from Kamal Dean. He says the primary check on unnecessary litigations is a fair and just... What? Oh, okay, I get your point now. The primary check on unnecessary litigation is a fair and just election. INEC needs to up its conduct of elections through adequate deployment of technology in order to reduce the human interface, allowing for abuses. The constitution of the tribunals is in itself an indication of a lack of confidence in the conduct of the elections.
Well, I guess that's it then.
Okay, yes, indeed it is. Yeah, so, well, thank you all for watching. We'll see you again tomorrow. I am Chamberlain Oso.
And I'm Ayo Makinde. Have a wonderful day, and please spare a thought for your country, Nigeria. Bye for now.